So you see the individual on the right side, he spiked what's believed to be the handgun. You see a woman walking away on the top of the screen. Officers give chase to the male, try to get him on the ground, he refuses to comply, and now the struggle begins as they try to take him into custody. And again, we'll go over this video a few times. The male's taken in custody at that point. We'll play the video out again after, but I'm just going to go back to the beginning of the video and explain some context. So at this point, the individual has spiked the gun already. I'm just going to go back and show that again. He comes into frame, throws the handgun on the ground, looks over his shoulder at the cruiser car. These officers are now attempting to get him to comply with their direction, but he's refusing to and continues to walk away. Officers give chase and attempt to take him into custody. The struggle involves a number of officers that attempt to safely restrain him, but were unsuccessful. Officers initially begin using what we call soft empty hand control and transition to hard empty hand control when it's proved to be ineffective. And just for information, hard empty hand control is physical control that has a higher likelihood of injuring a person but not intended to cause grievous bodily harm or death. And this includes striking techniques, which are seen on the video. So at this point, it's important to note that the officer on the left has his hands on the carbine rifle. So he's only got access to he only can use his legs. So soon after, a knife is observed at the individual's waistband. And at this point, you can see he delivers 2 kicks to the individual's shoulder. At the same time, the taser is deployed and the knife is dislodged. So it's very hard to see, especially I think for those that are watching on social media. Again, we'll provide this video. But if you look at the individual's waistband, you can see a knife get dislodged. And it goes up against the curb. So at this point, we're beginning to use less force. That knife has been removed. The individual initially provides his hands, but then again tucks it under his body. And at this point, the taser is used again, and eventually compliance is gained, and officers then get off the individual, and he's moved into a safe position. Later on, a metal pipe that was wrapped in a foil was also found on him. And it's again important to note that the information that we had received that we were acting on indicated not that he just had a firearm, that he had a large metal object on him as well. At one point it was described as a screwdriver. Other witnesses described it as being something larger and metal. So the firearm is not the only thing that we're looking for on this individual. We believe that he can be armed with. Again, this is incredibly tough for some people to watch. The vast majority of use of force encounters or encounters that the WPS have with individuals are resolved without the need for force. I believe last year only 4 incidences out of every 1,000 involved the use of force. That number can still come down, and the average every year that number continues to drop, and it's something we continue to work at. And our work will never be done until that number becomes 0. We share that goal with other groups. We don't want to use force, we never do, but it's a necessity, it's a requirement of the job at times. So once compliance is gained, officers give him space and ensure he's in a safe position. There's no further need for force. And once he's in the recovery position, we do this to alleviate the risk of positional asphyxia and ensure that if he vomits, there's no blockage. An ambulance is contacted, and the male is checked out and cleared by medical professionals. So this male actually admitted to using a significant, and I need to emphasize, a significant amount of methamphetamine the evening before, and that was self-disclosed by the individual. And that certainly contributes to complications when we're dealing with an individual. It's been described that this individual was in some sort of psychosis. The individual did not respond to what we call tactical communication or verbal direction. You can see from that video, we're trying to get his arms, we can't. Knee strikes are ineffective, and I mean, you need to point out too that most of these officers are larger than this individual and working in tandem, and they still can't get this person's hand out. That's the goal, get that person into custody safely, and they were unable to do so until the kicks were applied to the shoulder and the taser was used. The rest of the video is largely uneventful. You can see that they remove a number of things from his pockets. Turns out that they were needles. And again, they recovered that what's described as a metal object wrapped in a coil. At this point, they're waiting for ambulance to come. And even though ambulance came, this male reported that he was uninjured. And again, ambulance was called for precautionary reasons, specifically due to the state that he was acting in. There were 3 calls total that were documented. The first was for a report of a male who had broken into a building, caused a large amount of damage, was carrying around a metal cover, and there was a belief that he was armed with what was described as a heavy metal object, and it's unknown if it was that same object, that metal cover. And about 15 minutes later, we get a call that this male is now armed with a firearm, and is actually actioning the firearm and carrying the piece of metal as well and smashing windows. That certainly elevates and escalates the incident. The fact that he's carried around a firearm that he believes to be actioning. Same time, we get another call that indicates that this male is armed with a firearm. It's described as a black pistol by that caller, and still holding a weapon. This time it's described as a screwdriver or a long metal bar, and that people in the area were being directed away by Downtown Biz. So again, you need to look at the situation. We have a report of a male that's armed with a firearm. There's been 2 callers that substantiate that. The fact that this individual is working that firearm and actioning it, we're going to respond in this matter. Had this been a real firearm and somebody intent on causing harm to the public, we would have been criticized if we didn't respond in this regard. And we're very fortunate that we have the ability to respond with those weapons to ensure the safety of everyone in the area.
Is there anything that can be done better in this situation, where if it's the kicks or the use of force or anything like that?
There's always room for improvement, and that's the Winnipeg Police Service. We never stop growing as an agency. We always, whenever an incident like this happens where force above the use of handcuffing is used, a report is completed and reviewed by our officer safety unit, and we constantly adapt our policies to reflect what we're seeing. Methamphetamine is something that we really didn't see a number of years ago, and now we're seeing it quite often. We're seeing individuals who are acting irrationally, might be in psychosis, and we're always reflecting and changing our training policies to try and deal with trends that we're seeing or changes, some of which that is methamphetamine. And within the last 10 years, there's been a big emphasis on dealing with people who are in crisis, and how can we better deal with somebody who is going through those, an episode like that, or feeling the way they are, and understanding how these people are maybe seeing things. We recently incorporated a program, I believe it's called Sim Voice or something to that effect, where we put on headphones and hear voices talking to us, and it helps us give us an understanding from the perspective of the individuals that we're dealing with, something that 20 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't necessarily have. So there's always room for improvement. There's always we're always changing or adapting our practices to deal with trends. And again, our goal is to bring that use of force number to 0. That's a goal that we share with, I think, a lot of people. It's something we've worked hard at. The percentage of encounters that use of force has been steadily dropping over the last few years when you look at averages, and we'll continue to work towards that goal. So I've been on 12 years now, and from the day I started the academy, we've been always taught to expect the cameras are on you. That's just the way of life right now, and it doesn't change the way we do business if there is a camera on us or not. We're still expected to act professionally within the confines of the law. So that part hasn't changed. We expect cameras on us, and that's no surprise. I think it's been a very few interesting weeks for a lot of officers. A lot of us have taken a lot of time to reflect and listen to the concerns of the community, both the frontline level, and I think at the executive level, like the rest of the world, we're listening and reflecting.
Why, in your opinion, is the kick to the suspect justified in this video?
And I'm going to answer bluntly, that kick likely saved his life. If that individual gets a hold of that knife that's in his waistband, and officers see that and he has that knife in his hand, you're potentially in a lethal force encounter. So as tough as it is to see that kick helps dislodge that knife and bring that situation down to the point where we can handcuff him safely.
And in the information you have, the officer who made that kick, did he believe or witness or see? Because, again, it's a better video than the first one. Still, we're still looking far away. Did that officer believe the suspect was grabbing at the knife to go outside? I'm just not clear on that.
Yes, so I think you need to watch both videos, and it wouldn't have been fair for us to use the audio from the first video. This video doesn't have audio, and I'm just going to play it again, but this video doesn't have audio. The other video does, and if you listen carefully, you can hear an officer call knife, I believe twice. Something to pay attention to. So officers were definitely aware that the knife was there. I haven't had a